Hey there folks, the answer is yes. My hair is absolutely ridiculous and out of control, but please do not let that detract from how awesome these carvings are. They're super spooky and great for the Halloween season. We're going to be carving one today, and of course, as you might guess, I got a stencil for that. So folks, here is the lineup. This stencil is available in 1 inch, 1.5 inch, and 2 inch sizes, and each one is equipped with 2 face pieces. So the cool thing about this is that these face pieces are completely flexible. There's 2 different faces that are available, the pumpkin face and then the spooky ghost face. This is meant to go onto a round surface, so once you carve the face into whatever shape you need to, then you kind of hold it back like that and trace the figure. This guy is about 5.5 inches tall, roughly 8.5 inches tall, and this guy I made him a full 12 inches tall. Pretty impressive carvings. Very neat, lots of cool dry brushing, very neat detail. I'm really happy with the way that this guy came out. Believe it or not, I painted this one. My wife usually is the one that paints them, and of course she painted this one. I think this one looks marvelous. Hey guys, make sure you get onto our email list. Sometimes the algorithm doesn't let you know exactly when things come out, so if you want to be the first to know, get on our email list. Link in the description below. To lay this guy out, just use my stencil. To get the exact height, what I do is I use my stencil, I put it upside down, and I take the original cut face like that, and then I take it, I push it just a little bit so I can get pencil thickness right here. I strike a line on that flat section right here, and then I take it to my bandsaw or handsaw and cut it off. Okay, so now we're going to trace this out, and essentially this is being the front, we're going to trace everything. So let's go like this. Okay, now the other side, and on this side we're going to omit these rope sections right here. Okay, great. That looks complete. Okay, so now I'll turn it around, and we're pretty much just going to do the silhouette and the bottom of the shroud. Okay, that looks good right there. Great. That's the back. That's the front. Okay, let's start carving. Okay, so the first bit of material that we're going to remove is going to be this excess right here. So essentially just meeting up the lines, matching them up. Okay, so right there, and then pretty much everything down this side as well. I find that the easiest way to do that is just with a knife and go like this. Before we get going too far, actually, one of the things that we need to mark out is the diagonal. So this corner to that corner, we mark that out. Then we're going to do 1/3 of this distance. So if you imagine breaking it up into 3s, there's 1, there's 2. We're just going to use this one. So this is the line that we need to swoop the back of the head to, so we can make that hood. Okay, so you can ignore that second point. Okay, so that side is done. Let's go and do the other side. Okay, excellent. Alright, so here is the tricky part. We're going to start with the back of the hood, okay? And so we had this line over here, and that's exactly where we're going to take the hood back up to. So it's kind of a conservative line right now. We may end up changing the shape a little bit, right? So these hoods are not all the same, as you can see. This one is smooth on the back, this one has a divot over here. The larger one also has kind of a groove in there. You know, pick whichever one you want to do. Like if you want to do it smooth like this, that's perfectly fine. If you want to change it up and maybe, you know, do something like that, that's perfectly fine. So kind of choose your path. But what you are going to do is going to have to knock this down. So let's go and do that. See, we're going to try to take it to that line, and once you start to get there, you realize just how much you're actually taking off. That's kind of a conservative line, but that's what it's kind of looking like right now. And of course we're going to take up this entire back piece, so let's see how the grain's behaving. Looks okay. In some of the larger pieces I had some grain reversal over here, so you're not going to take it quite to that same line. You're going to try to angle it upwards, right, so that the figure in general is kind of swooping up. And of course you're going to have this separation over here at the shroud. So now let's smooth this out a little bit. Okay, now let's take this a little bit more to that line. And of course you want the hood to kind of progressively go like this, right? So here we go, you want to kind of start rounding it out. So of course it's still in the rough out area, rough out time period, so we'll refine it a little bit. Okay, so now we're going to take this front line over here, and we're going to connect this line to that back line. Okay, and of course you can do rounded, or you can do it convex, or rather concave. Convex, you know what I mean. Round this way, or round the other way. I think concave is when you have a cave, so if it caves in. So concave. Convex is if it bows upward. So just pick whichever one you want. Like that. Okay. There we go, like that. Excellent. Now we'll take this as well. Alright, now let's work this side right here. So we're going to knock down this corner and try to give it that general shape that we want. It's kind of hard to finalize it and fully visualize it until we've done the front as well. But essentially we want to round this section over. And if you want to do the hood a little bit differently, that's perfectly fine, it's up to you. I like doing it like this because it, I don't know, has that kind of creepy, ghoulish look. I've done the hoods differently for Joseph, and I think some other characters, but this is kind of what we're going for in this one. Okay, that looks good. So once we create the face, I think we'll get a better sense of what's going on with the hood. Okay, because obviously this face now needs to come off. So essentially we're going to connect, I would say, this point right here to that point right there. Okay, so if you can imagine, we're going to remove all the material. That might be a bit much. You know what? Let's go right here. So the edge of this mouth right here, we're going to essentially connect those two. Okay. Maybe even a little bit more. Well, we'll see. Okay. Cool. Now, the thing that you'll notice is that because we removed that material, the hood is now over here. Right, you connect those two lines, and so we have this excess material up here to take off. So, That's what I was talking about, that we wouldn't know the actual shape of the hood until we got the face done. Okay, so now let's take off the front over here. But we're going to work on the face next because that's, I think, the most challenging section. And in this case, I'm definitely going to switch to a detail knife when we get to the face section. Okay, yeah, and we're taking off some of that rope section right there. I guess, what do you call that? The tie. Okay, so now let's connect these two lines and start to separate the face. Okay, well, yeah, so like this, we're going to separate it from that shroud. Doesn't need to be super drastic, just enough to get a sense for, you know, some separation there. Okay, round it over a little bit. That's perfectly fine. Okay, so now here's, I think, the really cool part. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm super excited for this flexible stencil. I call it the Flexi stencil. Okay, so now, essentially we're going to round over this face, right? Right here. Try to make it a continuously smooth surface. I want to get rid of those jagged edges, because we're going to redraw that. Excellent. So now that face is almost completely gone. Okay, so now to draw that face on there, since we removed some of the original pieces, get that flexible stencil, this guy. So if you were going to do this face, do not separate the hood from the shroud. In fact, at that point you would make it completely round, and then put this face in there, then trace that out, and then kind of, you could see that there's some mismatch in the hood and the face, so, you know, it'll kind of look something like that, right, as opposed to completely filling in, because they're different shaped faces, so, you know, you'll have to play with it a little bit. But in this case, we're going to be doing the pumpkin, so put your pumpkin face on there, center it to where it is that you want it to be, and then pull those tabs back. Now you can hold them with the opposite hand. Let's see if I can do that. Okay, so it's not perfect, but I think it'll get you there. Now you can draw that face in there. Try to get into the corners without moving stencil too much. Of course, you know, if it moves too much, just come back and do it again. Of course, this smaller one is by far the most difficult to hold in place. The larger stencils are a little bit easier, a little bit more manageable, I think. Okay, and then you can see that you can also redraw the top of that hood over here. Okay, let's see how that came out over there. That's not so bad, it's pretty good. Right. So if you want to do a different shape face, that's perfectly fine too. So here, let's see. Right. Okay, so a little wonky there, but I think we kind of get the point. So this is where I'm going to switch over to a detail knife and get those face details in there. But first I'm going to score the outside of the face. Okay, so I'm going to use a V-tool to just separate that face from there. Try to focus to stay on the inside of the line as much as possible, especially towards the top of that hood. The smaller piece, it really does matter. The larger one, you have more room to play with, more material. This small one is really, it could be a little tricky. You know, if you take off too much material, it's kind of hard to come back from that. Remember, this is only a 1x1. Okay, so now I'm going to separate that. Okay, and let's excellent. I'm going to switch over to this knife, which is probably not really a detail knife, but I tend to use it that way. And let's go ahead and start making the face. Okay, and I'm going to angle the edges a little bit inward. Like I said, on this small piece it's really hard to get these details in there, but the larger pieces are much easier. So kind of the eyes, I want to angle them inward. Let's see, no, that one's still giving me trouble there. Okay, good. Let's do this one. Oh, it looks a little funny, but I think it'll pass inspection. Alright, let's pull that back a little bit. Alright, now these teeth, or the mouth, or whatever you want to call them, are kind of the tricky part. Right, so here's a blown up view of what it should look like. Right. This is what it ends up looking like on the small version, so yeah, big size difference. So if you're probably thinking to yourself, gosh, these really small stencils didn't give me very much detail. Well, it's because it's so small. But essentially all I'm doing is scoring as many of the lines as possible and then coming back with the knife and popping those out. So let's see if I can get that to work. Yep, just barely. And it doesn't need to be super deep, right? You just need to be able to get some black paint in there to make a difference. And actually, to paint these, the mouth, I actually used a black wash. So put some paint on your brush and you dunk it in the water, you dab it onto your painting tray, and you do that about 5 more times. Then you have this black puddle of water. Dry off your brush, you soak it back in the black puddle of water, and then you dab it onto the eye socket or the mouth, wherever it is, and you'll see that the water just kind of, it's almost like it's actually a watercolor technique that's used. My wife could tell you all about it. But it's actually super effective at filling in all the corners. And I found that it actually, this black paint from Hobby Lobby, like the Folk Art Pure Black one, is actually very glossy. So I found that that whenever you do that black wash, it actually tends to matte it down a little bit, so it's not as glossy. And especially after you dry brush it, it removes practically all of the gloss. which can be unappealing in some of these carvings, right? Like you're trying to have like a grungy look or something like that to it. It's not, doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't look good. You don't want a plastic look, you want a wood-like look. I think I may have taken off too much. Let's see. Oh, just a little bit. That's okay. All right. It's looking okay. And then the last section. Excellent. Alright, so now the last thing to do for the face is going to be to give it a more pumpkin-esque feel. And that, of course, every pumpkin has ridges, or rather most pumpkins. I don't know if there is such thing as a smooth pumpkin. I guess that's called squash. Okay, for this last section, I'm going to get my pencil, I'm just going to draw a line down the middle, until there, and I guess very little down here, and then I'm going to draw another line over here. Okay, I use my micro V tool, so really this V tool is just at a 45-degree angle, which allows me to take off a nice sliver of wood. Okay, like this. Just kind of trace those lines as best I can. This micro V tool is kind of nice for getting in there. It's not really necessary. Okay. So now, give it even more detail by sinking my knife in there and opening up that V, like that, and like that. And you can immediately see yep. There we go. Nice big V forehead there. Same thing pretty much on every single one of these. I think that looks pretty good. Cool. Okay, so now we can shape this hood a little bit more, you know, kind of round it out, give it a little bit better feel to it. So I'll take that, remove all those pencil lines. Kind of decide what shape we're going to do for the hood. Okay, what I've actually found out is that I don't like that flat back, so I'm going to kind of do a little groove back here. I think that's a good size right there. So it doesn't have to be super drastic, just enough to kind of get the point across. I can separate this a little bit more. Excellent. That's looking pretty good. Okay, cool. So now, obviously the face is probably the most stressful part. The body is not as difficult, thankfully. So let's just reconnect all these lines. Thankfully they're pretty easy to reconnect over here. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to switch over to my roughing knife, which, come to think of it, this is probably close to a roughing knife. Okay, and I'm going to start over here. So I'm actually going to switch over to V-tool, probably the better idea, and go over each of those lines. These tassels we're gonna draw again right here. There we go. Okay, and that's probably the only one that I'm not going to use with the V-tool. So, but this one I'm gonna do first. I'm gonna sink my knife in fairly deep and score it, because there's a good chance that that's gonna disappear, because I have to take off the material there to, you know, to shape it. Okay. No. Okay. I'll score all this stuff over here. Okay, and let's start to remove some of that material. Okay, we're shaping the robe. And the robe, the ultimate shaping is going to come with the gouges, right? So all these deep ridges and such, we're going to use a number 11 for that. But here we just need to separate this piece from the rest of the robe. This could be a little tricky with a knife. If you have a number 3, probably a good idea to use it now. But this small piece, it's actually not too difficult to do it with a knife. You can see we've separated. We've separated that from the main robe. Okay, excellent. So now let's go ahead and do this section right here, which is the chest area. We're just going to sink that knife in there and kind of really deeply score it. Do that on both sides. And do this corner right here. Okay, and now we're just going to remove that material. Separate the arms just a little bit. Right there, and this part as well. And just tuck the robe underneath that shroud. Then we're going to angle this cut outward. There it is. There. Now, when you're happy with it, then you can move on to the arms. There we go. Nice outward angle. Okay, now round this part over right here. Okay, overall we have a good shape, I think. And right here you can see that we need a little bit more separation from this cloak to the hood. But that's easy to do, right? So we just come over here, remove a little bit more of this material. When you look at it from the side, you can say, yeah, no, he has no neck. It's all just chest. So let's push this back a little bit. Now you can start to perfect the shape, right? So you can look at it and say, hey, are the shoulders too high? Are they inset? Do they look too steep, too hunched up? Like what's going on with the figure? So, right, the stencil gets you kind of to here, but then you gotta figure it out for the final details to kind of finesse it. Right? And I think that looks pretty good. You can be really drastic and pull them in like that guy, and that's perfectly fine too. You know, we can, in fact, let's go ahead and give it a little bit more shoulder definition. And all it takes is a couple hairs of wood, not an inch. But there it is, you know. Look at that. Drastic change. Just a little bit of just a couple cuts. Okay. That's pretty good. Alright, that's looking pretty good. Okay, so here, let's separate these right here. So now we're going to start doing the detail work. Okay, that's quite nice right there. Just remove all the pencil lines over here now. Okay, now here's the question you gotta ask yourself is, do you want the belt to go all the way around? And in my carvings, yes, I have had it go around on every single one. So we've gotta draw that in and incorporate it. So as you can see over here, that's what it looks like. So let's go ahead and put that in. So I like the arms to come in just a little bit more, and then up. Draw the bad side first. Let's see, does that look even-ish? Yeah. So now, let's draw the belt. Right there. Maybe give it a little bit more thickness. Does it look good? Looks a little slanted. Okay. So just take your V-tool. Here I'm angling the V-tool to make use of those wings to really separate the belt. So I could angle the V-tool like this, which is its normal orientation, but here I'm turning it. This file V-tool has really large wings, which is beneficial for something like this. So yeah, when choosing a V-tool, I would suggest that you get a larger one. Okay, now just separate this. Now, just kind of remove those pencil lines on there. You can always give it a little bit more texture with a gouge. This one being so small, it's kind of hard to come back and give it any texture without removing all of the belt. So it's a little bit easier on the larger pieces. Of course, everything's easier when you have more material. It's more forgiving. But these are still really impressive when you carve them out. Okay, awesome. So now let's go ahead and do a couple things. So I separate the shroud right here at the center, so I draw a line down, and then I kind of start to angle it outward. You don't need to do that, but I like it. So I'll show you how to do it. So just take your V-tool and just trace that line. Come back with your knife and clean it up a little bit. And just going to tuck this, it almost looks like an undershirt kind of thing, or rather the lower layer of the shroud underneath that primary layer. And it kind of gives you an opportunity to paint it a different color. So as you can see in this one, I painted it white. I thought it looks pretty cool. Okay, excellent. Alright, now let's go ahead and do the hands. So for the hands, I'm going to get some other tools. Okay, for the hands, let's draw the main central line. Right. Now let's do a couple other lines. One like this, a big long one next to that central line. Some other ones like this. Let's do the one all the way at the edge, obviously. And then maybe one or two more right here, so like that. Maybe kind of vary the lengths a little bit. Okay, or making them a little bit more vertical. Okay, so this is a 30-degree V-tool. It's not very good for going across the grain. However, going with the grain, it's very, very effective. So you can see it takes off very little material, but it can go very deep. So right here, I'm going to go deep. So now that gives the resemblance of the hands being a little bit separated, which is quite nice. Now I'm going to go and do this line right here. It doesn't open it up very much. However, it does go deep. And so then I can always come back with a knife and modify it a little bit if I need to. Okay, excellent. Good. So now I'm going to take this one, let it be more like a crevice of an elbow instead. Okay, and let's round this off. Oh, I don't think I did that other one. Yep, right here. Just kind of do that to your liking. Okay. Great. Alright, I think that's most of the V-tools that we need to do. Well, so far. As you can see, it still looks fairly square at the bottom, and that's because I want it to look like the robe is kind of flowing upward, or rather like it's kind of sprawling out at the bottom. And you'll see when we do the rest of these details, it'll really make the whole figure pop. Okay. Remove any of these hard lines over here. Okay. now, let's go ahead and start doing some of this gouging. So right here, I'm going to draw a nice long line right here. This line maybe all the way up to there. A shorter one right here. Nice kind of medium one. Longer one. Medium one. Okay, I think those are good. So now, this is my go-to for this. This is a number 11, and I think this is, gosh, 3/8 of an inch, maybe half an inch. I can't really remember, but we'll have it. Well, I'll look for it, and it'll be in the description. Okay, so all I'm doing is I'm gonna gouge these lines out, and towards the bottom, I'm gonna make them nice and heavy. Towards the top, you know, not as much. Every single line. This number 11 has nice tall sides, so it gives a pretty unique cut. And try to make it relatively straight. You don't need them to be super, and if they do wobble, just make sure that they're kind of progressively in the same direction. Right. That was fun. So now I'm going to switch over to the 30-degree V-tool. Essentially, I'm just going to highlight these guys by making them a little bit deeper. So this is great because now this allows you to paint really dark in the center over here and have very nice highlights on the external part of it. Okay. In some cases, I like to go past the gouge lines. So like right here, I'll go past the gouge line. The gouge lines stop right there, and so that fold is kind of starting above that. Right, especially right here. This one I'm going to try to go as far up as I can. That looks pretty good. Okay. And this is probably going to be the last gouge that we use. I don't know, maybe not. And that number 11 left some pretty jagged edges there, so what we're going to do is we're going to soften them a little bit. So here's a number 7 10mm, and it's a bent neck. You don't necessarily need that. You could also just use a palm tool. But all I'm doing is just softening those edges a little bit. Right? And if the wood breaks, that's okay. Just kind of ease it into there. This is a nice soft profile. And all I'm doing is just softening those edges. It actually is quite nice because even now by doing this, I'm still giving it more facets so that when you come dry brush it, there's more places for that white paint or that contrasting paint to catch on. Okay, right here. Okay. Now, look at that. That is pretty cool. That's a lot of texture, that's a lot of little details on there that will really make this figure pop. Okay, now the last thing that we're going to do is going to give the whole body some texture. So with the same number 7, look at that, I didn't have to use any other gouges. Just kind of go up gently, longish streaks if possible. I'm going to tuck that belt underneath there. There we go. I said I wasn't going to do any texturing. Let's see if I rip up the belt on here. No, it worked out. Nice. Quite nice. Okay. Let's give some texture to the rest of the figure. And this is an absolute must if you do dry brushing. This is actually the reason why I don't sand my figures completely smooth, because when you dry brush them, I don't know, it just gives them kind of like a, especially for these figures, they look like a tombstone. So, very Tim Burton. So, very cute, very cool, very cool. Okay, so like that. And the arms. And we're going to do the hood and the shroud in just a second. Okay, these now, I want to go like that. I want to start them at the edge of that shroud. And if you're having trouble, you can always just flip it over and terminate it at the edge of the shroud. Okay, and the hood, kind of your choice, but if you do gouge it, let it be lightly, right? And then make sure that they're going upward towards the top of the hood. Let's get rid of some of this flat texture over here. Bottom of the arms. Let's see. I know I missed some part of the shroud over here. Okay, and of course there's much more texture that you can do, but I think for the sake of time, and I think you folks get the hint. There is how to carve a little pumpkin Grim Reaper, whatever you want to call him. I think that's super cool. Hope you guys enjoy it and start carving your own. And like I said, these flexible stencils are really a game changer, so I think you're going to see more of these and some more stencils coming up. I can't wait to see these guys. Hopefully you carve them up in time for Halloween. Have a great time, stay safe, wear some gloves, stay sharp my friends. Happy carving.